Hi guys, we're going to continue today where we left off the last time, and that is in Surah 4. Remember last time I looked at 4.3 and I looked at the funny situation with the ors and the ands and how many wives you can actually marry. Today we're going to go a little bit further down. When we get to 4.11, we see that the Quran actually gives us some guidance as to the distribution of inheritance. Now, if it is really true that before the Quran there was no such thing and females got nothing, and now at least they get something, well, that would be quite a good thing. So if you read 4.11 and 4.12, then you see that Allah chargeth you. Well, He doesn't charge us anything, He just tells us what to do with this, regarding our children, what the females get, what the parents get. So there's a whole lot of rules and regulations here which make a lot of sense if there really was nothing else at the time. If we read in 4.12, it goes into more detail now, because now it tells us if the wife dies, what happens again with the children, with the parents, with brothers and sisters. And I mean, you really need to get this right, because if you don't get it right, guess what's happening to you? Well, you're going to go into eternal fire, which is not such a nice prospect, I must admit. Now, if you read further down Surah 4, you have to read all the way to the end, which actually sort of seems to end praising Allah. He sends you a clear light telling you what to do with the Quran, and He will guide you by a straight road. And then, like an afterthought, you get to the last one, which is 4.176, which seems to go back to inheritance. So it looks like they forgot something and then added this later, because now if a man dies childless, what happens if he has sisters or brothers, something which was not taken care of in the previous verses? So let's take a look at this, because, well, the thing is, normally what happens, people just look at the numbers. And this is something that I don't want to do. I really want to understand the text and not just dive straight in and see who gets a sixth and an eighth and a ninth and so on, but really try and understand what it is that we see here. So let's go and see what Surah 4.11 tells us about the division of inheritance, the fara'id. Well, first of all, we are told that Allah's rule number one is that the male gets double what the female gets. This is what Allah wants us. This is the first thing that He wants us to know regarding inheritance. The male gets double what the female gets. Then, if we go and see if there are women more than two, the women, this must be the daughters. So if you have only two daughters and no male, then they get 2/3 of the inheritance, which, well, it sounds quite fair. And if there is only one daughter, then she gets half. What happens if there's only one son, or if there's two sons? How does that split up? Okay, maybe we'll get this later. Then the parents, they each get a sixth of the inheritance if you have a son. If you don't have a son and there's only the parents, then the mother gets a third, which actually sounds quite fair. But if you do have children, then the mother gets a sixth. This doesn't sound fair anymore, but, well, that's the way it goes. And then it says, if you have not bequeathed anything else, then if paid the debt, so you can bequeath anything that you want. But then I don't understand why you need these laws if you can say whatever you want. Then it says, your parents or your children, ye know not which of them is nearer unto you in usefulness. Well, I hope this means that it doesn't really matter whether it's parents or children, because they are all supposed to be treated equal. I hope that is what it means. Now in 4.12, it starts off very well. I have a lot of hope here because it says if the wives, well, if one wife, well, I don't think all your 4 wives should die before you get something, but if one of your wives dies, if you don't have any children, then you get 1/2. But if you do have children, then you get a quarter of what she leaves after any legacy that they may have bequeathed. And again, they can say whatever they want, but if they don't, or if something is left, then you get half of that. And then unto them belongeth the fourth, of which ye leave if you have no child. Didn't we just handle this? But if you have a child, then 1/8 of which ye leave. No, hang on, this is now the husband again. So the first one was the wives, and now without any break or without telling us, we are now going back to the man. So now the man, if he dies and has no children, then they get 1/4. No, but hang on, just now it said that they get half, or 1/6, or a third. No, the mother gets 1/3. Now, it looks like I will have to put this into numbers after all. But if you do have a child, then the woman gets 1/8 of what you leave after what you have decided on outside of this. Now, if a man or a woman have a distant heir, if you don't have parents or children, like a brother or a sister. So if I were to die and I have no children or parents or anything, but I have a brother, then on the mother's side. So if I die, but I have a brother on the mother's side, then to each of them, they also get 1/6. And if there are more than 2, then they shall be sharers in the third. But now what happens if you have a brother and a sister? Then the brother should get double of what the sister gets, not share 1/3. Or this is going against 411, after any legacy that may have been bequeathed. Now, this is what Allah tells you what you should do. If you go to the last verse, then remember this one is now the distant kindred. So if a man doesn't have children and he has a sister, hers is half the heritage. And he would have inherited from her had she died childless. All right, this I don't understand. Now the funny thing is, I went and looked at the tafsirs, I went and looked at explanation. Nobody explains this. He would have inherited from her had she died childless, because everybody just jumps into the numbers, but they don't explain the words, he would have inherited from her had she died childless. If they have 2 sisters, then they get 2/3 of the heritage, as opposed to what was said previously, I suppose. And if there are men and women, then the male gets twice of what the females get. Now that is important. So this we hear all the time. No, this does not make sense in the text form. I shall have to go and find out what the real numbers are. So what I'm going to try and do is assign numbers to these sentences. Okay, so we've got the numbers. So let's see what we get from the different surahs. In 11, we see that the male gets double, that if you have 2 daughters, they share 2/3. If one daughter, the share is 1/2. The father gets 1/6, the mother gets 1/6, the mother gets 1/3 with no son, the father we don't know, the mother we don't know with a daughter, mothers with brothers is the same as before. The added information in 412 is that the husband gets 1/2 and 1/4 with children. The wife gets 1/4 without children, where before she was getting 1/3 in 11, so I don't know which one to take. And she gets 1/8 with a child, where she was supposed to get 1/6 with a son. So I don't know which one to take here. Then on the mother's side, the brother shares 1/6, the sisters share as well, and if there's more than 2, they share 1/3. The added information in 4176 is that the sister gets 1/2. If there's 2 sisters, they share 2/3, and brothers get double. I think it's high time we make an example. So let's keep it very simple. We have a father who dies, leaving his wife and his parents. So a quarter for the wife, a third for the mother, a sixth for the father. Total 3/4. Where does the rest go? Okay, let me go and enter this into a professional calculator, an inheritance calculator. Now, here suddenly it works out, because suddenly the father gets a half and the mother gets a quarter. What happened to all the Quran verses? Alright, that didn't go well at all. Let me make another example and add 2 daughters into the whole picture. So now, because they are children, the wife only gets 1/8, the daughters get 2/3, the parents get 1/6 each. If I convert that to 24th as the common denominator, I get 3 plus 16 plus 8, which is 27 24th. Oops. Does the community pay the missing 8th? Let's see how the calculator does. So we go and we enter the values. We take the 2 daughters, we take the wife, we take the father, we take the mother. Is there anything else? Any freed slaves? No. Press calculate and oh yes, what do we get here? 8/27th, and the wife gets a 9th? Where does it say in the Quran that the wife gets a 9th? So even the calculator, when he adds it up, he realizes it's oversubscribing. So they have to go and apply magic to fix it, because it doesn't make sense. The Quran calculation is wrong. Now, this does not mean that everything that I'm saying here is without error. I can be making mistakes, but what I see is a Quran that is making an attempt at settling inheritance disputes, but fails miserably, as the arithmetic is not thought through and leaves huge holes. It says the brother gets double of the sister's portion, but this is not applied to the parents. Yet when I change the scenario to one daughter, we suddenly have both me and the inheritance calculator doing the same thing, getting it wrong, and then the inheritance calculator applies the special case of the father and just simply increases it. Magic. What I've heard is the argument that a man usually has the heavier burden or financial burden, as he is responsible for the upkeep of the wife and the children. But what if the man is rich and single and the woman is a poor widow with children? She still gets half of what the man gets. Is this just? Is this what Allah intended? If a man dies without leaving parents or children or a spouse behind, but only a sister, then I suppose 4.12 applies. Have a brother or a sister, to each of the 2 a 6th. Or does 4.176 kick in? He has a sister, she shall receive a half of what he leaves. Is it a 1/6 or a half? And what about the rest? The Islamic calculator says the sister inherits everything. But based on what? There are so many scenarios that I can dream up, which all leave missing or surplus portions of the estate. Is this the best a God can come up with? And if humans need to step in and repair the errors in the Quran calculation, why bring it up in the first place? Why bring up something where 2 types of verses or different verses are attributing different portions to the same person? Now, if there is a scenario where I have made a mistake, please let me know. I am not without fault. And as always, if you believe that your God exists, feel free to do so. An error in a book made by humans should not deter you. So until you find it, I'm assuming that it is a book made by humans. Thank you very much for your time.